And now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today's webinar, Public Information Officer with the Nevada State Contractors Board, Jennifer Lewis.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. As mentioned today, we're going to kind of walk you through some of the Nevada State Contractors Board resources when it comes to hiring and vetting your licensed contractors. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll get started. A quick overview about today's discussion. I'll share a little bit about the Contractors Board with you. We'll kind of review some of the best practices for hiring a contractor. I'll then walk you through the board's license verification process on our website and explain some of the important details on a contractor's license that you'll want to be aware of. And then lastly, we'll kind of just wrap up with some of the board's free public resources, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. All right, so to get started, the Nevada State Contractors Board was established in 1941 by the state legislature. We have a 7-member board. 6 of them are licensed contractor members, and 1 member is representative of the public. Our executive officer is also appointed by the board. We're considered kind of a quasi-state agency. We operate under the executive branch, so we report to the governor. However, we are self-funded through licensing fees, so it kind of sets us apart. We do not opt into the state general fund. Our mission is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public while promoting confidence and trust in the competence and integrity of the licensees. I'll explain in the future slides how we do some of those initiatives and fulfill our mission. But basically, we have 3 main departments at the board. The first is our licensing department. Our licensing department is responsible for licensing all of our licensed contractors in the state. We have over 16,000 licensees currently, and of those, about 15,000 are actively licensed, and I'll get into some of those details. But our licensing process, and I'll explain some of this in the slides to come as well, is significant. We vet our contractors before we hire them, give them a license. Licensees have the opportunity, I should say applicants have the opportunity to go before the board if their license is denied and appeal the board's, or I should say appeal staff's denial of the license, at which time board members may decide to issue the license after learning the facts of their circumstances. Our enforcement division is broken up into 2 different categories. We have a compliance division, which handles all licensed contractor complaints. So anytime you have concerns with a licensed contractor, you would file a complaint with our office, and we would then investigate that process. I'll get into some of those details a little bit later as well. The other branch of our enforcement division is our criminal department. That handles all unlicensed contractor complaints, as well as our fraud unit. The fraud unit was established 2 or 3 years ago and has really been significant in investigating fraudulent cases against licensed and unlicensed contractors. All of our criminal investigations that merit or have enough evidence available will be turned over to the local district attorney's office or a higher authority for criminal prosecution. It's important to note that when you contract with an unlicensed contractor, it's typically considered null and void in the state of Nevada. Crimes for unlicensed contracting are significant. A first offense is a misdemeanor, a second offense is a gross misdemeanor, and a third offense can be a Class E felony. So we take that very seriously, and among those violations that we seek prosecution for, we also have a senior enhancement penalty when somebody over the age of 60 is the victim. We definitely seek a greater prosecution for that case. I think that wraps up a quick overview of our department. Oh, I'm sorry, our last department is our administrative department, which is overseen by our executive officer, and that would include our public information office, our accounting department, our information technology, so anything that's related to public awareness, outreach, our website, and things of that nature fall under that guise. So I should just give a caveat that at the end of this presentation, if you find that there's value for your own business needs, or if you have a local group or a community interest, we would be happy to customize a presentation for you. So please feel free to reach out to us at the end of the presentation. Okay, so getting into the meat of the presentation, what you see in the top right of your screen is what we call a Contractor Pocket ID Card. This is important to ask for in any project that you're considering hiring a licensed contractor. It displays all of the valuable information that you'll need to know in order to vet that contractor on our website. The areas that you'll see on here are the actual license number. Please note that a contractor's license number is different than a Nevada business license. A Nevada business license, I believe, is 11 characters long, whereas our contractor's license number is typically 5 characters with 2 zeros at the front. You'll also see when the license expires, and I'll go over kind of the importance of that. The contact information, you'll see the monetary limit there, as well as the classification, which depicts the type of work that contractor is licensed to perform. What's important about having a contractor's license are the bullets that you see on your screen. So prior to obtaining a license, each applicant must pass trade and law exams. These basically test their knowledge of not only the trade that they're about to perform, but also their business knowledge, their management skills knowledge, as well as their knowledge of other applicable state and business laws. You also must demonstrate financial responsibility. So we will look at the financial wherewithal of an applicant to ensure that they have the financial backing to perform the level of projects that they are asking to perform, which relates to their monetary limits. They must have at least 4 years of experience within the last 10 of experience within this particular field that they're getting a license for. So we ensure that they are current and know kind of what the current industry standards are. But most importantly, I think from a public safety angle, as we look at our mission, is that we require all of our applicants to submit fingerprint cards for criminal background checks. And this doesn't necessarily preclude an applicant from obtaining a license, but we do ask this question on our license application, and then we validate, or we verify, I should say, that information on their application with the results of their criminal background check. Again, if an applicant is denied for any reason that may pertain to that or financial responsibility matters, they have the opportunity to go before the board to, again, advocate their plea for licensure. And then lastly, we hold our licensees accountable to all applicable state and building laws. So, pulling permits, maintaining workers' compensation insurance, and those types of things. We have agreements with some of the state departments who will notify us of those violations from their jurisdiction, and then we can take appropriate action if necessary. Okay, so some of the protections that I wanted to highlight on the forefront when hiring a licensed contractor is that when you do hire a licensed contractor, at the time that the work begins, you have up to 4 years to file a complaint with the board of any workmanship issues or related concerns. That's significant. This is, many contractors will offer you their own personal warranties or some sort, but the board will always guarantee you 4 years of protection. So very important to understand. Upon filing that complaint, you'll receive the full investigative services of the board. That may include a job site visit, full review of your contracts and any related documents. Our goal in this process is to validate your concerns. Those issues that are validated, we may order your contractor to repair the issues or correct the issues. Typically, they're free of charge to you as the consumer, and that will be through a notice to correct. Why this process is important is if they fail to uphold those responsibilities or those orders of the board, they may face disciplinary action against their license, which could result in suspension or revocation depending on the severity of the crime. And then lastly, for owners of a single-family residence who have incurred damages as a result of their project that have not been remedied, they may be eligible for financial recovery from a residential recovery fund in the up to $35,000. There is a financial cap of $400,000 per contractor. So if you have a number of homeowners that are filing claims against a single contractor, the payout amount would be limited to the $400,000. But in the majority of cases, homeowners fall under that $35,000 mark and are made whole again. So it's an administrative process. It's free of charge. It eliminates the need of hiring outside counsel and having to go through civil litigation, which is often the case for those that hire unlicensed contractors. That is their only form of financial recourse. And I forgot to caveat in the beginning that most of the information I tried to gear toward business owners, but please keep in mind that this also crosses over into your homeowner life. So we hope the information you see here, you'll apply in a business sense, but also share it with those in your community and your family and friends as it applies to any construction-related project at your home. Okay, very quickly, the laws that govern of the Nevada State Contractors Board are Nevada Revised Statutes Chapter 624 and the Nevada Administrative Code Section 624. We have a yellow handbook in our office that is welcome we can make that available to you if you're interested. Please give us a call. But you can also do a Google search on these statutes and see kind of all the applicable regulations and laws that govern contractors in the state of Nevada. One important law that I want to bring to your attention is what we refer to as the Handyman Exemption. I know many of you are probably familiar with what a handyman is, but you may not be familiar with some of the limitations of what a handyman can do. First, I'd like to make a note that the Nevada State Contractors Board does not have a handyman license. You may, I believe a business license may be characterized as a handyman, but the Nevada State Contractors Board does not. You are either licensed within a particular trade or you are not. For those that do not have a license, they may operate so long as the work that they are doing is less than $1,000, and that includes both labor and materials. Why that's important is we often see some of these unlicensed contractors asking the owners to pay for the materials, and they'll come in and do the work for $900. While it seems legitimate on its face, from the Contractors Board angle, if you had any issues, we would look at the totality of that project, which would then be probably over the $1,000 limit. Also, an unlicensed contractor may not do any work that requires a building permit. All building permits must be pulled by licensed contractors. And it's important when we talk about building permits that those are received prior to the work being done. So ensure that you receive that in your contract terms. Additionally, an unlicensed contractor may not perform any work related to plumbing, electrical, refrigeration, HVAC, or fire safety. These are all life safety trades. And basically, even something as small as, switching out a fan or a light socket or something could have a dramatic effect. It could potentially burn down your house, and then you are left with the damage and the liability of that. We also want to caution you that many unlicensed contractors are likely to not carry workers' compensation insurance. So should they slip upon entering your home or your business, you then are liable for those damages. And we have seen cases where homeowners, unfortunately, get put into that predicament where they then are being sued for the injuries of that worker. And again, it becomes a very costly and unwelcomed process that they have to go through. The rest of the information on the screen is really not as important as what I mentioned, but it's there for your reference. So I'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so what I want to do is kind of break down the steps of hiring a licensed contractor. The first one is to obtain referrals and ask questions. This seems pretty basic, but what we want to caution you on, first and foremost, is to ask for referrals from those you know and trust, neighbors, coworkers, friends, family, anybody that feels confidently about the person they had come into their home. On the ask questions part, it's important that you ask pointed questions about things that might be of concern to you. Ask them if they stuck to the budget. Did they adhere to all your contract terms? Did they communicate well? Were they clean? Did they pick up after themselves? Any issues that you may potentially be concerned about, ask them about their own experience so that you go in to the conversation with your contractor educated and kind of having an idea of what to expect. Lastly, on that point, I just wanted to note that regardless of who is referred to you, even if it's your mother who you would never question, always be sure to verify that they are still properly licensed by the Contractors Board. And we'll walk through those steps. I can't tell you that time and time again we see this happen where 10 people have used this guy, but you're going to be that one person who unfortunately had something go wrong and come to find out they weren't properly licensed. So we just want to make sure that you're protected in every circumstance that you're entering into. We talked about verifying each contractor's license on the board's website, which I'll walk you through in just a moment. And then once you have all these vetted contractors, get at least 3 bids. You may not always have the opportunity based on the emergency of the situation, but when you do, we recommend getting 3 bids because it helps you to ensure that the contractors, one, are all on the same page, that they're all kind of giving you the same ballpark figure, or they're assessing the work that needs to be done the same. It helps you make a better educated decision. And it also can kind of caution you. If you've got 2 contractors that come in, at around $5,000, and then you've got 1 contractor that comes in at $1,000, the $1,000 is definitely intriguing, but you have to ask yourself, why is it so much lower? So we just caution you to not make cost your sole consideration when hiring somebody. Okay, so now we're going to jump into finding a licensed contractor. The Contractors Board, this is in the instance if you, for some reason, can't get any referrals or don't know where to turn. Our website does offer an opportunity for you to identify a licensed contractor based off of the trade, which is the classification, or within your county. I caution you, I should say, I wanted to note that the Contractors Board never makes referrals or recommendations on who to hire. However, each of our licensed contractors' information is available on the website. So what I have displayed here is that if you were to go on to our license search page, type in Clark County, and it looks like we're going to try to find an electrical contractor, you then will get what the right screenshot shows, a printout of every electrical contractor in Clark County that has an active license. The red circle that you see there is a quick hyperlink to that license printout. So if you find somebody or you want to print off 3 or 5 of these to begin calling and seeing if they can come out to give you a bid, you just do a quick click on that link and it'll give you all of their information. One more point that I wanted to make is in addition to friends and family and our license, there are also a number of trade associations in the north and south ends of the state. So you can always reach out to like the Electrical Association. There's a Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors Association. Any trade association can also give you some references or referrals to contractors that are members of their organization, which typically are in good standing. So that's another point of reference that we could direct you. Okay, so let's say you found a contractor. We're going to kind of break down what verifying a contractor's license on the board looks like. So as you can see here, the square box shows kind of the initial screenshot of our web page when you go to our home page. The arrow points down to the license search feature, and when you click on that, you'll see in the circle box the 3 options that you have to choose from. We're going to select Contractor License Search. The one below that was the screen that we just discussed, which was the contractor listing by county and classification. So when you click on the license search feature, you then can have the option to search by the license number, which is always recommended. You can also search by the company name or the principal or qualified individual name, essentially the owner of the company. If you don't have a license number but you want to look up the company name, always best maybe put in the first 3 or 4 characters of that company and get a full listing, as our website can be a little technical sometimes about correct, punctuation and spelling. So that'll give you the best bang for your buck, but always default to the license number when available. Okay, and this is what your initial screen for the license search will look like. What's highlighted here is a couple things. We have the principal name, the legal business name, and the DBA, the doing business as name. Why the legal business name and DBA name are highlighted? Your legal business name will tie back to the Secretary of State's office. As long as there's no other similar name in our database, that will be the only name that a company will go by. However, if we already have a name that sounds similar, to eliminate confusion for the public, we require a contractor to have a DBA name. That doing business as name is the name that must be used on all contracts, advertisements. That's the name they must use, period, from the Contractors Board perspective. You'll see the license number in the next box, and now we've added a new feature where we actually display the Nevada Business ID, which is that state business license. So you can, again, verify that information. The primary classification will be displayed there. This is an electrical contractor. You'll see the status of the license as well as the city and state. So what we always want to do from this screen is drill down so we can actually see the license printout. and this is what that will look like. A couple things that we're going to talk about here. So you see, again, the license number at the top left, the business names as well as the DBA name, again, just having that for your reference, and why the business address, the contact information, is important to look at is because you want to make sure that the information you were provided matches what is on our records. There have been cases of unscrupulous activity where maybe a former employee or a rogue employee is using the license number of their former or current employer, however, providing you with their personal contact information. So they're presenting themselves as being affiliated with the licensee, but everything they're doing is coming directly to them, and we'll get into some of those red flags. But if you see any discrepancies with the business contact information, contact the business based off the number you see on our report, and just make sure that this employee is current, that they're aware that they're out at your home, and make sure that there's no concerns on the front end. Looking down at the status of the license, I've kind of got a sidebar box there that gives you the various things that you may see. Active means that they're in good standing. That's what you want to see for any licensee that you're about to engage with. You may see on probation. That means they can still perform work, but there may be limitations to what they can do. So best to contact the board if you have any concerns or see somebody that's on probation. Some of the red flags might be voluntarily surrendered. If you see this, that means that this licensee voluntarily gave up their license and should no longer be bidding jobs. If you see inactive, that simply means that they have their license, but they've chosen at this time that they're not going to be doing work, so they're paying basically a different license fee to keep their license but stay on an inactive status. Again, if you see this and it's from an entity that's bidding work or interested or soliciting work, I would advise not to go against this and to notify the board. Same with suspended or revoked. Neither of these statuses should be doing any work. Revoked means they no longer are licensed and absolutely should not be doing work. On the status date refers to the status. So if you see that they are on probation, you'll see that the status date will reflect the start of when that probation began. This person has been active since 2016. The origin date shows you how long the company has been licensed. So this company has been in business since 1977. That can sometimes be valuable to see how long the business has been in existence, if they're a new business, and can kind of give you some general thoughts about the success of their operations. The expiration date is important only for the fact that if you are entering into a contract now, let's say, and the license expires in December, and you know that your project is going to go well into 2019, you're going to want to have a conversation with that contractor to provide you a status that they have renewed their license timely. So it's nothing to caution you against, it's just a piece of information to let you know that you don't want your contractor to lose their license in the middle of doing work for you. Underneath that, you'll see the business type as well as the classification. The classification, again, relates to all of the work that contractor can perform. Each of our license classifications can be found in the Nevada Administrative Code section. If you flip back into that section, NAC 624, you can go directly to this classification and read the exact scope of work that they can perform. And that will help you kind of compare it to your project and see if that person is properly licensed. If you're unsure, you can submit in writing your full scope of work to the board, and we will be happy to provide you with a letter that will direct you on the type of license classification that's needed for your project. We just ask that you do that in advance of going out to bid because we will not opine if it's concurrent with your bidding process. And lastly, in that top right corner is your license monetary limit. This company is unlimited, which means they can do any contract amount of work. However, in most cases, you'll see some type of dollar amount there, whether it's $100,000 down to, I think, $5,000 or even $1,000, I think is the lowest that I've seen. That simply means that they cannot exceed that dollar value for the single project that they're working on, for a single construction site. If you have any questions about that, always contact the board. Or if you know of a contractor that you've used in the past who maybe has a $10,000 limit, but you have a larger project coming up that maybe exceeds to $15,000 and you still want to use that contractor, let your contractor know ahead of time, and they can apply for a one-time limit increase with the Contractors Board, allowing them to go above that limit for your single project. Okay, on the bottom half of our license printout, you will again see the principal name and the qualified individual. These are the owners of the company. These are the license holders. This is who the board holds accountable for any actions of that company. We often get asked about employees of a company. And just know that as long as they are valid employees of that company, any work that they perform on your home or business is covered basically through the umbrella of this license. So, John Doe may have 1,000 employees, and each of those employees' work is still held accountable to Mr. John Doe. What you'll see underneath that is our bond information. There are two types of bonds. You have a cash bond, which is maintained by the Contractors Board. So we will receive that and hold it. And then if you have any claims that you wanted to submit against the bond, you would file those with our office. However, we also have a surety bond. I shouldn't say we have, but a surety bond is also available to the licensee, which is through a third party, and you will see that information listed there as well as the bond amount. And those amounts are already set based off of the monetary range, so I wouldn't be too concerned about that, but certainly that information is there to allow you the ability to file a claim if you need to. Underneath the bond information will be another orange banner called Disciplinary History. This will display any of the disciplinary actions that occurred within the last 5 years. If you don't see anything like this screen displays, that means that this contractor has had no disciplinary action within the last 5 years. However, the red arrow is pointing to a box at the bottom that says disciplinary action older than 5 years. So if you don't see anything, always best to click on that button, and it will then display any actions that may be taken. Okay, this doesn't necessarily pertain to this contractor, but to give you an idea of what our disciplinary history looks like, you will see a couple different types of discipline. We have administrative citations, which basically is a ticket, for lack of a better word, to the contractor in which a fine is paid. Those are affixed to the license, so you will be able to see that information. They're not necessarily egregious when it's an administrative citation, but you will have at least the violation that was had there. So best to pay attention and at least do some research. What's more important, at the bottom of that square box, you'll see a pending disciplinary history. Pending means that the hearing hasn't happened yet, obviously, but what you will see are any disciplinary actions that have been taken or ordered by the board as a result of a disciplinary hearing. Again, read through those violations and you can kind of judge for yourself the egregiousness of those violations. In looking at the facts, I apologize, it looks like my text box there went a little over, but you have some of the things that you may see or take awareness of are the frequency or repetition of the violations. So if you pull up their license and you see a laundry list of disciplinary actions, that's probably going to cause you a little bit of concern about moving forward with that contractor. Again, considering the egregiousness of the violations. Are they all administrative citations, or are a lot of them disciplinary actions as a result of a hearing? Some of the things you may read are acting beyond the scope of the license. That means you may, for an example, an electrical contractor may have done some painting work. They've worked outside the scope of the license that they were licensed to perform. Next, you may see failure to comply with building or industrial relations laws. This simply means failure to pull building permits timely or maintain their workers' compensation insurance. The Contractors Board now has a statutory obligation to suspend a license when a lapse in workers' comp we are notified of a lapse of workers' comp by the Department of Education, Training, and Rehabilitation, Department of Industrial Relations. So this is real time. All of our license information is real time. And if they don't remedy that situation, then it's likely to go to a hearing of some sort. The failure to establish financial responsibility, that can be of concern. It basically shows that in their past, they have not maintained the financial wherewithal to support the contract limits that they've been entering into. And then I plotted what you can't quite see at the bottom of your screen is aiding and abetting and license loan. These are some of the most egregious violations. Aiding and abetting is hiring or using unlicensed contractors for a project. This is of importance to you. If it's not of concern to you, what I would recommend is if you see somebody with a history of this, as you're having your negotiations or your discussions with the contractor, ensure they provide you information about the workers that are going to be performing work on your home or any subcontractors. They should provide you a list, and if it's a subcontractor, providing you with their license number so you can again validate that anybody that's in your home is properly licensed or falls underneath the license of a contractor. And then license loan kind of goes back to that example we talked about earlier, where maybe a company lets somebody else who is unlicensed use their license number fraudulently to solicit bids or get information and perform work on your home. So you think you're entering into a contract with a licensed contractor when in fact you are not. Okay, so now that we've gone through the license verification process, you hopefully would have at least 3 contractors that you're interested in calling. Once you have identified the contractor, you've met with them, they've given you their bid, and you've selected one that you think you would like to use, it's important to not only review your contract terms, but insist that every detail that you have discussed is written in your contract. This includes things down to, the type or brand or size of materials that you want to use, any particular time frames that were discussed that you expect your contractor to adhere to, ensuring that every possible detail from your conversations is in that contract is vital, because when something goes wrong, that contract is what the Contractors Board uses in their investigation, and they will hold the contractor accountable to whatever term is in that contract. We also want to make sure that you're aware that this includes change orders. So when we talk about a monetary limit, change orders are also included in that. So as an example, if you hire somebody who has a $10,000 monetary limit, and you hire them initially for $9,000, and then as you get into the project, they give you another $5,000 change order, the totality of that project now is $14,000, which is well over their $10,000 limit. While this isn't necessarily of concern to you as the home or business owner, know that your contractor should know better than to perform that type of action. And if it does happen, you can certainly notify us and we can take appropriate action against their license or notify them in terms of a violation letter. But when it comes to your contract, make sure that any change order is approved before the work is performed. A lot of times we do see change orders come after the fact, and so homeowners are kind of stuck with the bill. We want to make sure that you are aware and that the change orders are signed off on by both parties prior to entering into the work. Never let your payments get ahead of the work performed. Depending on the size of the project, it's kind of it's your discretion about how you pay. If it's a small project, it may seem logical to pay up front or pay at the end, all in total. However, if it's a large project, it's likely you're going to have some type of phased schedule in there, a work timeline, and payment should align with those time frames. And again, contact the board with any concerns that you may have. I wanted to go over a couple red flag warnings. So the Contractors Board never recommends paying with cash. Cash has no way to be tracked, and it's basically his word against mine. At least when you pay with a credit card or a check, not only do you have the verification that the payment was made, but you also have the added protections from your financial institution in addition to the Contractors Board. We talked about large down payments before work is performed. This typically comes up, again, with that material. So there are contractors out there who may ask for a significant amount up front to pay for materials. And it's really, again, it all falls under your discretion and what you're comfortable with, but we really caution against paying more than 10% or $1,000 up front prior to any work being performed. Otherwise, you do leave yourself more vulnerable and at risk for a contractor taking your money and not returning. Writing checks to an individual instead of a business entity. All of our contractors' licenses are licensed business entities. So you should never be writing a check to an individual person themselves. That kind of gets back to our rogue employee example or a license loan example. If someone is asking for you to write a check to them personally, definitely do not do that. I would contact the board or contact the company for which you have hired them from and notify them of the circumstances. They may not be aware that their employee is operating this way. And then lastly, if there is no work or communication for over 30 days, that's when the Contractors Board considers your project abandoned. We definitely recommend trying to resolve as much as you can with your contractor prior to contacting the board, giving them the opportunity to do what's right and to make right. However, if you have gone over 30 days without any communication or just constant delaying of your contract terms or the work to be performed, definitely give us a call and file a complaint, and we can kind of insert ourselves into that process and hopefully get you some remedy in the meantime. And then lastly, I wanted to share with you some of our consumer resources. The brochures that you see on our website, the brochures you see on the presentation there are what we have available. The Ready, Set, Hire basically details our license verification process, so it's in writing for you to kind of do step by step. We also have a how to file a complaint, so should you find yourself in need or of concern of the workmanship that's being done on your property, please get that to us as soon as possible. We open a complaint within 5 days, and then an investigator will be assigned and be in touch with you to follow up on your concerns. I mentioned our Residential Recovery Fund. Again, this is only for owners of single-family residences, so it's not available to any work performed on your business. We want to make sure that you're aware of this, though, as it is one of the greatest protections we offer at the Contractors Board. The next brochure is a senior guide to identifying scams and seeking assistance. Seniors are often the ones that are most taken advantage of in our communities, and the Contractors Board really takes priority in these cases to protect our seniors. Although this is geared towards seniors, most of the information there is just basic common red flags that anybody should know. It includes door-to-door solicitations, high-pressured sales tactics, as well as other valuable information that anybody can benefit from. So I recommend checking that out if you have time. And then lastly, we have a Choosing the Right Landscaper. We do have some other brochures in development that will come out that will feature information about solar projects as well as pool construction. So continue to check back on that website. The YouTube page there, we've established a government YouTube page. We have videos available. Right now they're specific to disaster preparedness as well as disaster response. So when we think of disaster, we don't always think of Las Vegas, but things like high wind, the monsoon season, flooding, those types of things where damage is significant. We kind of walk you through some of the steps about how the Contractors Board can be of assistance and really what to look for, as those are times when unlicensed contractors are most likely to come out of the woodwork and take advantage of you. So we have a whole consumer resources page available, and again, I would really recommend that you check that out before you hire anybody. And then to conclude, happy to answer any questions, but if you have a need to contact our office, our Henderson office location is listed there for you. We are based out of Henderson, off of Green Valley and 215. Any questions related to licensing, enforcement, or public information can be fielded through that number, and we can get directed to the right place. If you are aware or come across any suspicions of unlicensed contracting activity, please report those to our board. We have a hotline. You can do it anonymously. We prefer if you have your name on the complaint so that we can follow up with you with any additional details that we may need. But if they're soliciting you or soliciting somebody else, they're probably doing it to a number of other people who are then putting them in an added risk and liability. So we're here to protect the public, and I appreciate your time. I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. And again, if you'd like to ask a question, you can feel free to type it into the chat box in the bottom left corner of your screen, or you can unmute your phone by dialing *7 now. And if you don't have questions now and you want to ask Jennifer or the Nevada State Contractors Board a question after this presentation, feel free to reach out to them with the numbers that are on the screen right now. Just a general question, how long is the license usually when they get it?
License renewals are every 2 years. So they can keep their license as long as they want, so long as they renew it every 2 years.
Okay, great, wonderful. Well, doesn't look like we have any questions coming through. I want to thank you so much for joining us today on this very first Chamber University of Fall 2018. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you to the Nevada State Contractors Board. And we hope that you join us next week as we talk to Sofa King Creative about the importance of branding your business. So we'll see you guys next week, and thank you again.